Hello there, good evening. What we're all after right now is a little bit of clarity, isn't it? For all of us, clarity on these lockdown restrictions. For Sunderland fans, clarity on what on earth is going on behind the scenes at the Stadium of Light. For Newcastle United supporters, when will this takeover be done? And for football fans in general, when, if at all, will the Premier League and EFL seasons resume? Well, I can't offer you any definitive answers this evening, but instead, plenty of insightful chat on all of the above in the next hour or so. I'm Andy Sixsmith, this is Football Matters, and here's a little bit more, well, clarity on what's to come tonight. Confusion continues to reign at Sunderland. Will they play again this season? Question marks remain over the club's finances, and now the Black Cats have banned a national newspaper. We'll be hearing from the Daily Mail's Craig Hope on all of the Stadium of Light shenanigans tonight. 8 weeks and counting now. The Newcastle United takeover saga rumbles on with plenty of rumour and conjecture. Is there any end in sight? We'll be asking the Shields Gazette's Liam Kennedy a little bit later. And the virtual Vars, a big name in at Durham City, and a football manager game gone viral. We'll be rounding up all of the other news in North East football from the last 7 days. So, with so much up in the air right now, it is relatively handy that one thing remains consistent every single week, and that is the return of these three. The Football Matters pundits, firmly in their prime, well, of punditry anyway. And in the week of the return of the Bundesliga, it's hello, sorry about the German accent, to a man who seems to be working harder in lockdown than I've ever seen him work before, North East football writer Mark Carruthers. It's willkommen to the bloke, presumably still reeling from being overlooked for the Durham assistant manager position. No Stein for you, Sunderland legend Darren Williams. And it's Guten Abend, and we are starting to run out of German greetings now, to the Toon favourite who overlooked Darren and who spent his lockdown finishing Netflix and taking over a pub. A Newcastle takeover would firmly put the sauce on his schnitzel, so to speak. Former Magpies defender Olivier Bernard, who's disappeared already. We're off to an absolute flyer, aren't we, on Football Matters this week? Olly can presumably still hear me. So, gents, what is the weirdest thing that has happened to you in the past 7 days or so?
I'd imagine for myself, it was probably sitting reporting on a game of Championship Manager, but more of that later.
Yeah, I was frightened there. I thought you were going to give too much away, but I feel like I've already done that in the intro myself. But we'll come back onto that, Mark. Darren, we can see you and we can't see Ollie, so I'm going to come to you next. What's the weirdest thing that's happened to you in the last 7 days, mate?
Strangely enough, probably seeing football on the telly, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it was nice that.
Maybe apart from that, maybe he's waking up with my daughter laid across the top of my head. She'd actually climbed into bed and fell asleep on top of my head. So
she's a bit young to be getting on the drink, isn't she, Darren?
Well, that's what I thought.
Like father, like daughter, mate. And Ollie, I'm not entirely sure if Ollie is still there. Ollie, can you hear us? It was the dancing. I reckon it was the dancing, that's completely ruined him for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to start messing around with it. I'm just going to try and remove him and then add him again. But we'll get back onto things because, Darren, you mentioned it. The Bundesliga is back. Fantastic to see football back in some way, shape or form. Everyone's been doing this. What's your team?
I'm in Cologne for me. Obviously having a link with Sunderland. And obviously we smell nice as well. So always a bonus.
Goes without saying, doesn't it? Goes without saying. Mark, what's your Bundesliga team for the week?
Werder Bremen. My dad used to work on an army base in Germany, and he actually had a Werder Bremen season ticket at one point, I think. Went to see them play in the Champions League. So, yeah, probably Werder Bremen, who suitably are doing horrendously this season.
Yeah, Werder Bremen not doing particularly well in the Bundesliga, I think it's fair to say so far. Ollie has now officially departed the conversation. I'm sure he'll find his way back to us at some point during tonight, but we're going to have to crack on because I promise, hopefully, this week, fingers crossed, we will be within the time limit. We'll see how wrong that goes, unfortunately. But quick reminder tonight, folks, as ever, every single week, We are on all sorts of social media. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We are at youtube.com/Football Matters. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram @Footy Matters TV, and give us a like on Facebook too while you're at it. You can watch this on YouTube or on Facebook instead. Please do give us a watch, give us a share, wherever you might be. We will return to the Bundesliga chat in a little bit. But for now, let's say auf Wiedersehen to Deutschland and get back to northeastern shores. Even by their standards, Sunderland have had a tumultuous few weeks, haven't they? Appointing a new chief executive, then news breaks in the Daily Mail of a massive hole in their financial accounts, and now further investigation from the same paper shows owner Stuart Donald can charge a whopping 9% interest on loans that he has made to the company Madrox, who own the club. That investigation has led Sunderland to shut down communication with the Daily Mail, accusing them of being Newcastle fans. Interesting. Darren, before we bring our guest on, we talked the image of Sunderland last week, didn't we? This is going from bad to worse, isn't it?
Well, it seems that way, doesn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, I think in situations like this, when you find a black hole in the accounts, there's issues around that. People are going to dig further and going to have a look, and rightly so, because obviously people want to know the answers. Yeah. And I think in the way maybe they've kind of dealt with it is probably the wrong way, because now they're looking even more guilty, by people from the ground, by saying that they can't have any more interviews, etc. This is where I said last week, there's just got to be a bit of clarity here. Open it up. If there's no issues, if they're doing everything by the book, then as an individual, you'd be fine for people to just look through and say, right, yeah, fair enough. You crack on and have a look. Because you'd have nothing to worry about. But the more and more they put it off, and the more they do things like this, the worse it's looking. And like I said, it may all be okay. However, the way they're coming across doesn't make it look that way.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult situation for Sunderland right now. It's certainly not great. Like I say, it was a story that was broken by the Daily Mail, a story that now revolves around the Daily Mail as well. So I'm delighted to have football writer for the Daily Mail right back on the show for the second time in 3 weeks now, twice in 3 weeks on Football Matters now. Normally we scare people off first time. Craig, lockdown must really be getting to you if you're back on Football Matters.
No, it's a pleasure. Don't be daft. We'll have some football to talk about one day. I gather it's off the field matters which are our chief concern yet again, as is ever the case in the North East.
Yeah, that's the thing. Last time it was Newcastle, this time Sunderland. Take us right to the start with this one, the start of the investigation into Sunderland's finances and what you've since discovered at the Daily Mail.
Well, the start of the investigation goes back over a year. If you remember, in May 2019, myself and some colleagues at the Daily Mail revealed that Sunderland's owners had used the club's own parachute payments to in effect buy the football club. And that was the first time that had been made public, and as a result, there was much coverage at the time. I think the majority of supporters really were on the side of the owners, and the reaction to the story, in terms of the reaction to myself, was rather negative, really. It just showed what a good job Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven had done during that initial season, really, in terms of the PR and getting supporters on side. But we thought it was important what we did in letting supporters know that the club's own money had in effect been used to buy the club. Now, at the time, Donald, Methven and Sartori, we'll call them the owners, they promised to put that money back in. We believed it to be somewhere around £32 million. Now, the owners argued it was closer to 25 million. So anyway, listen, whatever the amount was, it was going to go back into the club over whatever period of time. Now, we then learned a few weeks ago, last month, whenever it was, we came in receipt of the draft accounts for the forthcoming, for the 2018-19 season, which were due to be released. That was delayed by the club because of the coronavirus situation. We were given these accounts, and we looked at them, and we discovered, like others who had came close to buying the club, we discovered a £20.5 million hole. Now, that hole was by way of, quote, an exceptional operating cost, which in effect meant that of the money owed to Sunderland, which was the parachute payments the owners had borrowed, £20.5 million of that had been written off. So in effect, they'd removed the legal obligation to pay back that money. Now, when we put that to the club, Madrox, Stuart Donald, whoever it may be, who was answering the questions, they said, yes, that is the case, but we intend to pay the money back. So we had the situation whereby the story ran, was it last weekend, 10 days ago now, back page news in the Daily Mail, that this money had been written off, and it was causing would-be buyers of the club to walk away when you discover a £20.5 million hole, so to speak, in accounts. Their belief was that if they'd met the asking price for £35 million, this would leave the current owners with a very sizable profit, having written off the money they owed the club. Now, they were given no guarantee at the time that the money would be repaid. So yeah, that was the motivation, the source of the story. We also revealed at the time that Juan Sartori had paid only £1 for his 20% stake in the club. We had documentation that supported that. Again, when we put all of these questions to the club, some of them were answered and some of them weren't. The Sartori question, for example, wasn't answered. They said that all dealings between Madrox and its shareholders was a private matter for them. So supporters read the story, and it left a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of supporters ill at ease with the financial situation of the club. Now, I must stress that the owners did come out and have said that all money borrowed and that the money that was written off will be paid back into the club. Now, that's all very well and good. I suppose the question we may have asked is, would that have been the case had they sold the club 4 or 5 weeks ago for £35 million? The answer is, we don't know, do we? Then we had the story in the Daily Mail on Friday, a similar theme, which revealed that a charge document exists whereby Stuart Donald, any money loaned into Madrox, which is a holding company that owns Sunderland, can, if he, at his own discretion, I suppose, be subject to an interest rate 6% above base rates. Now, again, we sought to get answers from the club with regards the discovery of this document, and we got nothing back. The club have severed all forms of communication with the Daily Mail. We're no longer allowed on the premises. They're no longer talking to us in any form, be it email, telephone, whatever. We're getting nothing back. So again, questions we put to the club, having shone a light on the club's finances now, they're choosing not to answer whatsoever. And that leaves a very, very unsatisfactory taste and feel for supporters and journalists, and raises far more questions than it does answers, really.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me perfectly on to asking, these findings in particular, the way that Sunderland has been run in the last few years, did these findings surprise you at all, given how they've been run, given the way that they've dealt with this situation with yourselves at the Daily Mail?
Well, first of all, let's just state that I don't think they've broken any rules here, but the one word we'd use is perhaps they've been, at times, I don't know, a little disingenuous, or they've held back certain elements of the truth. Yeah. And again, the key thing is there are still so many questions we need answered here. Yeah. We've put them to the club, supporters groups have put them to the club, and there are still holes in us establishing the full picture of the flow of money between Sunderland, Madrox, Stuart Donald, who owes what to who exactly, who has put what in and when, the nature of the FPP loan as well. So a lot of questions here we'd still like to know a lot more about. Did it surprise me, Andy, to answer your question? Well, we've been looking at their finances for over a year now. So when you unearth these little things, well, no, it probably does come as no surprise to answer your question. And we just wish they were more forthcoming with answers, basically.
We have touched upon the kind of, use the word very, very loosely indeed, but explanations that have been put forward by Madrox, the responses that have come from Madrox. How satisfied are you with those explanations? They still, like you say, leave glaring holes and a lot of questions to be asked still, don't they?
No, absolutely. They do, and I think that is the biggest cause for concern among Sunderland fans, really, that you look at the reaction on social media or on message boards, anecdotally, text message I'm getting, emails I'm getting from readers, and that is it. The one message from fans is keep digging, keep going, keep on asking questions of them. The only problem is we can't get any answers right now because they're not responding to us at all. So no, listen, as a journalist, it's your job to ask questions. It's your job to speak to as many people as possible, to gather as much evidence as you can during the course of these investigations, and to shine a light on anything that you feel may be untoward or there holes. I use the word hole in the account. There was a hole in the account in us as journalists. We exposed that, and it was satisfactory to do that. And the motivation ultimately is for the good of Sunderland Football Club, really. And on this occasion, I'm glad that supporters realised that, because 12 months ago, and I touched on this at the very start, 12 months ago supporters didn't. We took a hell of a lot of abuse for revealing what we did, and that was disappointing at the time, because understandable, because I think supporters didn't really want to believe it. But this time around, it's a relief to see supporters are seeing the good and the positives in what we're doing as journalists.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you said before, Craig, you stopped from doing your job to a certain extent by Sunderland deciding that they're going to shut down communications with the Daily Mail. How did that even come about? When did they notify you? And of course, we've read the article. They notified you by accusing you of being Newcastle fans, which is a little bit messy, isn't it?
I still don't know if they have notified us, to be honest with you, because it was an email from Neil Fox, the executive director, that copied myself in, and I still don't know if I was actually meant to be copied in. Within it, he instructed a colleague at Sunderland to bar us from all communications and club premises, basically. Within the confines of that email, there was an accusation or a suggestion that our motivation for digging into finances was because we're Newcastle fans. Now, that is either A, very disrespectful, or B, not very intelligent. I'll let you decide which one you think it is. But I've read the reaction to that over the weekend, and I don't think it reflects very well in the football club. When I read it, I couldn't, my jaw hit the floor, really. I thought, is this really what we're dealing with? Come on. We're all meant to be bigger and better than that. I don't think it reflects very well, shall we say.
And I imagine it's not going to stop you carrying on digging into Sunderland finances at all, is it?
Absolutely not whatsoever. Listen, sometimes when you're banned and when you've been kicked out, it motivates you to dig a little bit deeper and a little bit harder. So let's see what this weekend produces. Yeah,
it's interesting. Darren, I'm going to bring you in on this as a former player. We've seen clubs do this with media outlets before, newspapers, broadcasters, the likes. From a player's perspective, how does it sit with the players to see your club shut out a media outlet like that?
Well, like I said, touching on it earlier, the way they're coming across right now is obviously, as if they've got something to hide, and like you said, if they haven't done anything wrong, if they're not doing anything wrong, and they haven't got anything to hide, then just be open about it. Do you know what I mean? And and then they turn around and say, Craig Olly, he's in Newcastle. I mean, for a fact, no one would support Newcastle. I mean, come on.
Nicely summed up, mate. Nicely summed up. Craig, before we let you go, without going into too much detail, this is already a pretty messy situation, shall we call it, at Sunderland. How much more ugly do you think it can get?
Well, it could get very, very ugly, couldn't it? Of course it could. Stuart Donald has made his mind up now that he wants out of the club. Supporters have made their mind up that they want him to go. So you've got that friction, that conflict there straight away. But for Stuart Donald to go, he needs a buyer. And this is another thing as well. You've got to be very mindful of who he sells the club to. It's no good selling it to owners who are going to steal it at a cheap price just because Sunderland supporters want to chase Stuart Donald out of town. I think the majority of Sunderland supporters realise that as well. So, yeah, listen, it's a situation I'm not entirely comfortable with at the football club at the moment, because as journalists, from a selfish perspective, we want Sunderland Football Club to be thriving and to be in the top tier of English football. And the way it is at the moment, that feels like a long way off. Listen, what is the best scenario? The best scenario is that Stuart Donald finds a buyer with the best intentions at heart, and hopefully deep pockets as well, to fund the football club and to take it back to where it wanted to be. Listen, the current owners have done some good. They've done some good on two fronts in my mind. One, they did initially re-engage with the fan base, and at that you could say they were expert really in the manner at which they did it. In two, they have written off. Listen, the financial state of Sunderland Football Club was horrific. It really was, and the deal they struck at least gave the football club a chance to move forward in a way that a lot of the debt was written off. The problem we subsequently had was a portion of debt was then created, which was put onto the current owners. Have they got the financial means to put that money back into the club? Have they got the will to put that money back into the club? We don't know. So there was at one point a little bit of a chance for this club to move forward. That was probably dependent on promotion last season and the owners selling and new owners then coming in with the club in a stronger place. That didn't happen, and I think it's just stuck in a little bit of a rut, in a little bit of a place it perhaps shouldn't be now. And it does scare me to a degree what the future could hold for Sunderland. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope our journalism can help in some way to shine a light on the situation. But it probably does need new owners, is what I would say going forward.
Well, we hope in the very, very near future that Sunderland decide to reverse that decision and allow you guys back near the club, because we certainly need it. And like you say, it's not going to stop you digging anyway. In fact, it's going to galvanise you even further. So unfortunately, it might have a bit of a detrimental impact on Sunderland necessarily. But Craig, listen, thank you very much for coming on the programme again. Really appreciate it. Twice in 3 weeks, like I say, probably more than enough for anyone. So we'll give you a few weeks off before coming back to you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
So as Craig departs, Olly Bernard is back. Olly, you just decided to skip the Sunderland section, didn't you?
No, just not interested. As soon as you start talking about Sunderland, I did fall asleep. Sorry, but sorry, Daz. I won't do that again. Promise.
No,
promise.
No worries. I thought you were trying to find those Newcastle trophies to polish.
Shall we just move on, lads, and get right into the next part of the debate, which is about the EFL, still to do with Sunderland. So hang on, Olly, just hold on, don't go anywhere. It's only a brief bit of chat about Sunderland. There could be some better news for Sunderland fans around the corner. EFL still in talks about how they'll end their seasons at League One and League Two level as well. Sunderland in 8th, remember. Lots of talk that the top 2 would go up. Then there'd be playoffs between either places 3 and 6 or 3 and 10. I know we've talked about how to resume the season before, gents, but where do we stand on that? Darren, obviously it plays into Sunderland's hands. If it is playoffs between 3 and 10, how would that sit with you?
Well, I mean, obviously we don't make the ultimate decision, do we? I think, we spoke about it, last week. For me, life's more important. We all love football and we all love watching football and, attending games and week in, week out. But, it's just, there's just so much going on that is far more important than finishing the league season off.
There is. If this is the way that they decide to go about it and decide that, they have to finish the season, they don't want to go on points per game, they want to go down a playoff route, is that the fairest way around it, do you see, Olly, or not?
I mean, yes, because the finish will have an end. But is it fair on people, who haven't been training during that isolation? Is it fair on players and managers who haven't been in place because you do. You lose the dressing room at one point, when you go on holiday and you come back, you do come back a stone heavier, and then you've got 3 weeks to get back on track. I think it's a bit faulty because I don't think they will be in the same frame of mind. We talked about before about playing without spectators. It's not the same. The smell, it's even more the smell of pre-season for me, and it could be damaging, for players' mentality more than anything else. I think it's, football is yes, you play the game, but you play the game for the fans, and having when you don't have the fans, then it becomes difficult.
Yeah, and obviously it affects both. We're not ignoring Middlesbrough here as well. Middlesbrough in the Championship, it could well affect them. But focusing on Sunderland, Mark, Phil Parkinson said in an interview this week that integrity, which is a word that we've talked about on Football Matters before, would be better served with this playoff system. Do you agree with that or not?
discussing football and integrity doesn't really go together very often, does it? Let's be honest. But no, I mean, you know my feelings on it. I wholeheartedly agree with Darren. I made the point a couple of weeks ago. I just feel the same decision should be made across the board, that we should, void the season and start again when it is 100% clear to do so. To answer your question, I don't think there is integrity. Integrity can be upheld in any decision that's made. There's going to be some that have been harshly treated by a decision. There will be some that will benefit more than others. So I don't think there is a simple solution. I don't think there is a way to appease everyone and do it fairly. There is no fair way to end the season. That's the simple matter here. Again, to go back to what Darren said, we are still losing hundreds of people every day to what's going on. What happens, between the white lines on a football pitch is largely, if I'm honest, it's irrelevant. That's the top and bottom of it. We are seeing, and I know we're going to discuss this, the Premier League have taken their first steps. That will probably allow the EFL to move on, which in turn allows the National League to move on. So it is a domino effect. So, I think we may see some progress in the coming days right across the pyramid. But again, I go back to it. It's, for me, the only decision that can be taken. Yeah. And it won't be. I'll say that now. I know it won't be, but it is to void the season.
Well, where's between having a playoff system between 3 and 10 and playing those games against each other than just finishing the season?
I think go on, Ollie. Sorry.
No, it's for me. We said it. More than once. The season should be avoided and restarted in September.
Totally.
It's better. It's harsh on teams that probably already won it. But it's fair when you talk about across the whole team. Nobody goes down. Nobody get promoted. You do the season avoid, and that's the best you can do, and that's the best way you can have everybody kind of happy. I'm thinking more of Liverpool who had it in the bag, unfortunately. But for when we talk about football, I like the games to be played, from the first game to the last day of the season, and that wasn't the case this year, so it should be repeated and avoid.
Do you think that there's a general feeling amongst players? There's been a few players, especially in the last few days, who have come out, some a bit more forcibly than others, but, other players as well have kind of come out and given their opinions on whether it's safe to go back, whether they feel comfortable with going back. Do you feel that the vast majority of players, guys, are not comfortable with going back and playing football now?
I don't think a lot of players are comfortable with going back and playing, to be quite honest. And I think, realistically, if those lads do go back and play, potentially are they going to, play to their best of their ability? Because I don't think they are, because in the back of their minds, they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
It's a bit like somebody who doesn't want to be at a football club. Yeah. He's going to turn up to that football club and play his best. So potentially you've got players who are going to turn up because they turn up, but don't really want to be there. So. We're in putting ourselves in a situation where we're forcing people to do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, but if we're going to kind of bring it into a nutshell, does it come down to only those two decisions now? The season either gets voided completely and cancelled, or we have this playoff system in place that the EFL have talked about and mooted over the last week or so. Points per game, it doesn't work, does it?
It doesn't, because you're effectively predicting what would happen over the rest of the season. And, we've seen shock results throughout the season. We saw Watford hammer Liverpool. Everyone's talking about Liverpool being champions elect, which I think we know what they are. Anything can happen. That's the thing about football. That's why we love it, because between those 90 minutes, anything can happen. So you can't then judge the rest of the season based on something, that hasn't happened. It's just not fair. But I think what we need to look at here is the government and the Premier League and whoever else are effectively using players as guinea pigs. Can we go out and do this? They can't guarantee, and I'm sorry, there's no cast iron guarantee that those players will not contract coronavirus at some point when they go to match action. You can't do it. And that, to me, is unfair on these players. I've heard this argument about, it'll help the national morale.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's just an awful, awful argument. And you know what? The minute one player contracts coronavirus, the minute that comes out, everything should stop. Well, it should stop anyway, but everything will stop the minute that happens.
There's a terminology, like obviously, I've used in football, over years, managing and being a player, is teams in a relegation system. We always used to say, it's coming towards you, you're playing against a team in the relegation. These lads are fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
You put the other perspective on it. There's people out there fighting for their lives.
Yeah.
And we're on about, whether we should finish the bloody football season or not.
Yeah, I know. It puts it into perspective, doesn't it? And I think it's a perfect time that we do move away from it, because this is something that we could talk about all night. And in reality, we certainly don't know. Not many people know exactly what is going to happen, if anyone, over the next few weeks. One league, of course, that we mentioned before, the Bundesliga, returned at the weekend. Before we get onto that, the K-League in Korea also returned. Did anyone see their substitutes for crowds over in Korea, in Seoul in particular, I think? Mark's nodding his head. I saw your tweet about it, actually, Mark. They decided to put rope dolls in the crowd instead. How would you enjoy playing, Mark? And Mark, sorry, mate. I had you down as a former player there.
Andy, before you go on and say this, be very, very careful how you word this question.
With the terminology. I'm already got it, mate. I'm reading it off a screen, and even I can do that correctly. How would you guys deal, Darren and Olly, if you were a player playing right now and you were playing in front of no crowd? How would you feel playing in front of blow-up dolls?
Yeah, you fall into the trap, mate.
Really, wasn't it?
No, it's not my style. It's not my style.
I mean, I've heard the phrase "getting yourself up for a game," but that's completely different.
I think we're blowing it out of all proportion, aren't we? Let's be honest. So Seoul have had their ideas about it. Bundesliga are back. Darren and Mark have asked you about who you supported. Olly, you disappeared to avoid the Sunderland line of questioning earlier before we could ask you. Bundesliga team for you?
For me, it's Dortmund. Dortmund is quite an attractive team to watch. Quite exciting. So definitely Dortmund, yeah.
Interestingly enough, with Dortmund, I was going to ask before we talk Newcastle United and bring you back round the full circle. I was going to ask you guys, sorry, Mark, again, to leave you out on this one. Just watch if I say any words that might be construed as a bit of a euphemism here as well. For Darren and Olly, Erling Braut Haaland, don't know if you saw on social media, but recently he's become a bit of a phenomenon, not just for his goal-scoring abilities and his prodigious talent, but also his quite blunt interviewing style in terms of his answers. Gives very, very short answers back. Makes it quite awkward, I think, for a few interviewers. Have either of you two been in a situation with yourselves or a teammate where you've been involved in such an awkward interview or not?
Right now.
I'll have to say yes. I'll have to say yes. We went back in 2002 when Laurent Robert was signed by the club though. So I've been at the club a year. Yeah. And Laurent just signed the second year, 2002. And Laurent's get man of the match. Can't speak a word of English. So everybody's like, Olly, do you want to translate? I went, okay. so we go in, and then a nightmare started. Myself, I couldn't understand. I wasn't that good in English. So he started the same question. He started the first question, and I'm thinking, what do I do? What do I do? Okay, so I talk French to Laurent. I said, I didn't get it. So, I didn't get what he said. But, find a few words to talk about the game today. He starts, second question arrived. And it goes, something with the goal. I said, they want to ask you about the goal you scored. And Lauren trying to talk. And then we realized he couldn't speak English. So I'm like, okay, let's try it. So I translate for him. and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It was horrible. It was horrible.
That's like a bona fide disaster, to be honest with you.
Oh my God! It was broken English with a Chinese accent. Honestly, it was mad.
Did they cut the interview short? Did they eventually?
Yeah, very. The first question was, do you enjoy your time on the time? I got that one. I went, yes.
Good answer, mate. Good answer. Guys, Darren, have you got anything to improve that, or?
No, probably not to improve that one. I wouldn't have thought.
I'll tell you what then, mate, we'll jump straight on to Newcastle United, because we've kept our second guest waiting already. We're awaiting further news, like we say, on the EFL, how they're going to end their season. We await further news on, yes, you guessed it, the Newcastle United takeover. It's into its 8th week. Very odd situation. As far as we're aware, it's still with the Premier League for the owners and directors test, but despite it not being confirmed yet, there are articles coming out about what players, what managers are going to be joining the club, while other articles are casting actual doubt on the deal itself. I'm not sure what's worse for Newcastle fans at this stage, lockdown or the saga, in terms of the takeover. Ollie, what's worse for you?
Say it again, sorry.
What's worse?
You want me to translate?
we need Lauren Robert on here. We can flip it round.
I was thinking, I was rethinking the moment in my head, and I was thinking that was a nightmare.
The only reason I questioned you, mate, I could see your eyes glaze over. I thought,
I know, I was like,
I'm just saying, what's worse for you as a Newcastle fan, lockdown or the takeover saga dragging on and on?
The takeover is dragging far too long. Even though today I heard that it was happening tomorrow, but you know, I hope it's happening tomorrow. I've had enough of it. It started to build, and you know, always they put it back. But hopefully tomorrow it'll be official.
How confident are you that might be the case? Put a percentage on it.
Yeah, 80%. 80%. I think there's a from a good source. I heard that it was going to happen tomorrow. So, you know.
So you've been off down the corner shop for your cans, have you?
Well, I've been around. You know what I mean? It's isolation where you're allowed to go shopping, and then you know, in the shop you discuss things, and you know, when you things happen, you know. So.
I don't want to delve too much into that after your pie comment last week, mate, to be honest with you. So we'll come back to your source, and we'll see whether the takeover is going to go ahead tomorrow. But we have to bring in our second guest for this evening. He has been patiently waiting, I must say, throughout this episode. I'm delighted to actually have him on, if we can actually get him on, and if technology is going to allow me to even admit him into this conversation, which at the moment it isn't doing. We'll give it just a few more seconds. It's really not been our friend tonight, what with you deciding to leave, Ollie, and other things happening. But I'm delighted to say that eventually we can drag him into the conversation. It's the Shields Gazette's Liam Kennedy. Liam, we're struggling to see you at the minute. Let's see if we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Well, we can hear you, mate. We'll hopefully bring video into the proceedings very, very shortly. Thank you for your patience. Really appreciate it tonight. But you'll be used to being patient reporting on the Newcastle United takeover, so it's nothing new to you, I'm sure. Before we get into Newcastle, we've talked all things Bundesliga and then returning from the lockdown. We want your top tip for lockdown and your Bundesliga team as well before we start talking Newcastle.
Lockdown. Stay calm.
Is that the takeover or lockdown?
It's a bit really. We've got 3 kids in the house, so just gotta keep a level head, stay calm, not get too worked up. My Bundesliga team, I would have to say probably Schalke.
Okay, fair enough.
It's wind with Gelsenkirchen.
Boo!
Just to point out that Ollie went with Dortmund on that one, Liam. He's not booing you personally, don't worry. It's just your choice of Bundesliga team. Let's talk Newcastle then. I hesitate to even ask this. what is the current situation from your perspective, Liam, from the Shields Gazette's perspective?
There hasn't been a massive amount of development over the last couple of weeks, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
These things do tend to go a little bit quiet around the time when they're potentially going to be announced. And I do get the feeling that this one is still on track, despite all the noise that we've heard over the last few weeks. I think one of the big issues with this has been when something like this is played out in public, there can sort of be a fatigue to it.
Yeah.
I think if Newcastle fans had just found out when they found out it was happening, there was joy, there was excitement. Whereas now, I almost feel like it'll be relief for everybody when it finally does get announced.
Yeah.
The emotions have been, everyone's been through the mill almost with Newcastle United at their heart, really. So it's the problems that the Premier League are having with getting football restarted are having a massive impact on them giving the green light for Newcastle United's takeover.
Yeah.
Who are working close to the deal keep telling me there's not a concern with it, and that is enough for me to trust that this will go through. There has been a lot of noise. It's almost been a three-pronged attack recently. I think in the last week we've seen politics brought into it. There's been obviously the human rights element, and then there's been club objections or rumours of. My understanding on that, now I haven't had it 100% confirmed, because I know there was a little bit of talk over the weekend about, do clubs need to ratify this? Is there some kind of 2/3 rejection vote? That kind of talk. My understanding is that I don't think the clubs do. I think they can actually have a say on this, obviously, because they're stakeholders in the Premier League. But beyond that, I don't really think there's any cause for concern with Newcastle fans who may be out there worrying, thinking 13 or 14 clubs reject this, then Newcastle United's takeover's up in smoke. I don't believe that is the case. And like I say, I think it's more that the Premier League have got a lot on their plate, as well as trying to get football restarted in England. They've also got the problem that this probably is the most controversial takeover they've ever had to make a ruling on. The amount of pressure coming from all angles has been incredible. So I don't envy them having to deal with that and the legal ramifications that come with it. But by the same token, they've got to be seen to be going through due process. Had this been rushed through when we originally found out within a week or two, then the criticism would have come their way. So I think they've had to make sure every box is ticked with regards to the legal aspects of this takeover.
Is there an argument then to suggest as well that the Premier League are taking ever so slightly longer just to demonstrate that they are conducting such a thorough investigation, especially like you so conveniently put it, with there being a three-pronged sensitive attack on this takeover, with it being potentially so controversial? Do you think that they're just taking a few, more days, a couple of extra weeks, just to show that they are conducting a more thorough investigation?
Yeah, I definitely think they are, and I think they'd be right to. I think anybody taking a decision of this magnitude would be wrong to rush it through. I think they have to make sure that everything's above board. And do you know what? I'm a Newcastle fan as well as a writer, and I'll be as happy as anybody when Mike Ashley leaves the club. But you've got to make sure that you're handing the football club over to people who can look after it almost. And I think had they rushed that through, there would be concerns that were these the right people to take the football club forward? Because as I understand it, it's very basic, the Premier League owners and directors test. It's worded very basically. Are you a criminal, effectively? No, fair enough. There isn't really any suggestion that anybody put forward by any of the consortium is a criminal. And have you got the cash now to pay for it? Yes, they obviously have. If the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia haven't got that kind of money, then we all do need to be a little bit worried. So I would imagine the money is there. I'm led to believe it is. And have you been involved in any bankruptcy regarding football clubs or been banned from being a director elsewhere? And I think it would be very strange of a consortium who've been putting this together for the last 2.5 years to have put somebody forward who meet those criteria. So I don't really see there being much more of a problem. I just think it's taking time, and I think that they're doing the right thing by taking their time. It isn't great for Newcastle fans and their mental health out there. I know a lot of people with not much else going on or driving themselves mad, but they're doing the right thing. They're taking their time and they're doing the checks properly.
And especially for you twofold, being a Newcastle fan as well, being a Newcastle writer. As a Newcastle fan, Liam, you know, with the human rights record being as it is, how does that sit with you, with the Public Investment Fund and the human rights record? It's something that has been talked about, debated, deconstructed heavily over the last few weeks. How does that sit with you as a fan rather than just a journalist?
Be wrong to say that it's not an uneasy situation for any fan. The ethics of the country whose sovereign wealth fund that it is will be taking majority control in Newcastle United are questionable at best. Many people see them as abhorrent. Amnesty International have been heavily critical over the last few weeks. Obviously, we've had Jamal Khashoggi's fiancée, Hattie Spence. She's come out again today talking about like to see the bid rejected, and I can take all that in, but almost as a fan, I think you have to, in some ways, separate yourself from that. As a fan, you want a football club that does well. You want a team that does well. You want to be able to go on a Saturday, not that we can with the current situation, but you want to go on a Saturday and enjoy it, see some good football, see some good players, and give you something to shout about. Yeah. And I think that it's been like a hope vacuum almost on Tyneside for the last 13 years. And I think the relief of that for a lot of fans would be just to see anybody come in.
Yeah.
The fact that it's the Saudis, I think there's a lot more powerful people than us who are accepting deals with them in government and preferred trade partners in the Middle East, the biggest ally in the Gulf in terms of the UK government. So they seem okay with it. Are we okay with it? Well, it doesn't 100% sit right. I would say that. But
why would you say that? Why Disney is one that has come up over the last few days in particular. Why aren't other organisations receiving the same level of scrutiny that Newcastle United have done in the past 8 weeks?
It is an interesting argument. I've seen that come up over Twitter over the last few days, and it is a fair point. You would think that the high-profile investments that the PIF have made recently, that they should be coming under much more scrutiny, but there isn't really an answer to that. Is it Newcastle United probably the smallest bid they've put in? I think they've paid half a billion for part of Disney.
Yeah.
But I think the English Premier League, because of its global reach and how high profile it is, I think that's probably why it's taken so much objection from certain quarters. But effectively, I mean, what are you going to ask every subscriber at Disney? Are they going to have to take that in their own hands? It isn't a fan's job to reject this. It's the Premier League, and if the Premier League genuinely see it as okay, then we have to buy into that. It doesn't mean we have to be blind to the criticism of the regime, but I just want to see. I want to see a good club to report on, not one that's sort of like I described before. It genuinely has been a hope vacuum.
And the interest, I know we focus on the Public Investment Fund from Saudi Arabia because they obviously account for 80% of the deal, but we should talk about Amanda Staveley, but most importantly, the Reuben brothers as well. What's the latest situation with them? Because currently on the board at QPR, aren't they?
Yeah, so one of the key indicators moving forward that we'll be able to tell that things are genuinely ramping up would be Jamie Reuben stepping aside, because as I understand it, he's been a key driver of having the Reuben brothers involved in this deal. He's a massive football fan, and I'm led to believe he will be on the board in some capacity. Whether that's executive or non-executive role, I'm not 100% certain yet, but I think that would be a key indicator moving forward that this was really ramping up, would be when he decides to step down from the QPR board. I spoke to them yesterday. That hasn't been the case, but I think it may well be flagged up on Company's House, another one of those kind of announcements first, and we'll probably find out about it that way. So, the Reuben brothers, they've got big plans. They've already got land that they own in the centre of Newcastle. There are plans to develop training ground, probably the ground in future, and I think they'll probably play a key part in that.
One last one, Liam, before we do let you go for your Monday night. I'm not mentioning the man by name, but one person who does keep piping up is a certain presenter in the Middle East, shall we say. He said that he wouldn't talk again about the Newcastle United takeover. He has talked about it and says that there's now another option on the table as well that is going to rival the public investment fund Staveley and the Reuben brothers as well. In short, mate, how realistic is this?
It's irrelevant. It is at the stage the Saudi deal is at the moment. It is absolutely irrelevant. The deal is signed. There's been a deposit of 17 million to see this deal through. The Premier League are doing their checks.
Yep.
There can't be another bid. The idea of exclusivity is irrelevant as well. It doesn't really make any difference to this bid at all. Yep. All we're waiting on now is the green light from the Premier League and the transfer of the rest of the funds to Mike Ashley's bank account.
Yep.
That is all we're waiting on. So anything said man says over in Qatar is just geopolitical noise.
Very well put indeed, mate. I'm going to ask you to hop off the fence before you disappear and try and provide us with, as well as best you can, a timescale. When do you think that this can be done? Because I know a few people have tried to chuck timescales at it. When do you realistically think that this could be done?
Well, I'm going to keep the spelks in my backside because I can't say when this is going to be done.
I thought I'd try, but you can't blame a man for trying.
It's one of those that unless you're party to the negotiations of the Premier League, it's impossible to say. Would like to think that because Project Restart has ramped up this week, that things might start moving, but it's impossible to say, unfortunately.
All right. Listen, mate, don't worry about it. I'll leave you up on that fence for now. But thank you very much for coming on Football Matters, mate, and make your debut on the programme. Really appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't seem to get your video up, but at least we could hear you, and that's the most important part of it all. So thanks for your time, mate. Take care. Stay safe, all right?
Cheers. Thanks for having us on.
Top man. Thank you very much. That's Liam Kennedy, journalist for the Shields Gazette. Ollie, you heard it there. He said he can't put a time scale on it. Only people closest to the deal can put a time scale on it. You said
I must be very close then.
And this is what I want to drill down on, mate. You said 80% before that it happens tomorrow. You sticking with this?
Yeah, I think it will. It'll be announced tomorrow sometime. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What makes you so confident with that? Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to reveal your source at all, but you know, what makes you so confident about that when there have been, as you well know, as a fan and as a former player, so many fans?
I believe it's been going on for far too long.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, day by day, you've got Sunderland fans, you know, being happy, you know, happier by the days. So we need to make sure we take the smile away from the faces.
You're not referring to any specific fans. He's still smiling. You're not going to take the smile off Darren's face at all anytime soon, I don't think. Right, well, we'll await that. We'll await for tomorrow. And if so, mate, you do realise this has opened up an avalanche for you now, Ollie, if you are right, and it does take place tomorrow, and people have heard it here first. Your Twitter is going to be inundated.
I've got my text written out already.
At least there's going to be one tweet, that's for certain. But cracking it here, we shall await with bated breath to see what happens there. Let's go on to a bit of a roundup of the rest of the week, of the last 7 days in particular. Mark, you're going to be the best person to come to on this, as ever, because there's been so much happening. I need to start, though, with this virtual Vars. Yesterday was meant to be the FA Vars final. Fans may have missed a trip to Wembley, Hebben in concert, at least virtually did they?
No, thanks to a few good friends, Nick Rowe, Dave Black. We did a virtual Vars final on the old Championship Manager 97-98 game. The Shields Gazette got on board, thanks to Richard Minear and Ross Gregory for that. We did a live blog of the game in real time. And it went down really well. There's a lot of supporters and players of both sides getting on board. Hebben won 3-2, very entertaining game as well. Beating Concert, an All Northern League final. So yeah, just a bit of fun and something. You know, life's pretty monotonous at the moment, and every day it feels the same. So it was just something to break the boredom and try and get something a little bit different out there.
Well, congratulations to Hebben on being virtual Vars winners in 2020 at least. Hopefully, competition.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully, at some point in the not too distant future, they'll get a chance to at least play the semi-finals and hopefully the final.
Well, while we're on virtual simulations, they're not the only lower league club involved in, Championship Manager or Football Manager, aren't they? Tow have got involved, haven't they? Talk to us about this one.
So yeah, Tow, there's a sinkhole opened up at the ground up at Ironworks Road to the side of the pitch. Pretty big sinkhole as well. There are photos online. But as with any club in non-league football at the minute, and not just non-league, they are battling against the current financial situation that's been imposed on them by coronavirus and the lack of income. So there's a YouTuber, I think that's a correct term, or influencer, whatever you want to call him.
Sure.
That does challenges on Football Manager and videos them, and he has, I think it's around 120,000 followers on YouTube or subscribers, and he's got 20,000 followers on Twitter. So he put out the link. I should say he chose Tow as this challenge that he was doing. So had natural interest in the club. He put out the link to the kind of fundraising that they were doing, and I think it's around £6,000 they've raised so far because of him. That includes donations from places like Australia, New Zealand, America, and what they've done, they put his logo on the front of the home kit for next season, and that's brought in a raft of interest from his subscribers who started buying the Tow home kit next season. So they are now, I think they've sold over 100 kits for next season. Amazing. So great story, and just shows the power of the power of YouTubers, I guess.
Never thought we'd ever say that, did we? But it's put Tow on the map as well, which is absolutely tremendous. Ollie, Darren, are we going to see either of you taking Sunderland or Newcastle to the Champions League final on Football Manager anytime soon?
I might try, mate. I'm trying to fill that sinkhole that's in the accounts.
Very well played. Strong line. Very strong line indeed. Ollie, are you going to take charge of Sunderland on Football Manager?
No. I always said I wanted Premier League club to coach and manage. Sunderland would be a bit low, but I don't mind helping out. But in terms of putting my name on it, no, thank you.
Very, very magnanimous of you. Very magnanimous indeed. Ollie, we need to stick with you because there's been a bit of news around Durham City, of course. We asked you about, the assistant manager last week. First and foremost, it's not Darren. Have you got any words of condolences to him?
We had a little chat. I rang him after, and he said no. So we got that one sorted. I begged him, but he wasn't interested.
The offer of beer not enough, Darren, from his new pub, or
no, he wanted a keg.
I'm surprised it was only one keg. In fairness,
I can't afford that.
He said a keg a month. I was like,
well, instead, it's not a bad, second choice, I suppose. Tom Wade, great appointment, isn't it? How much does he bring to the Durham table, Ollie?
I think that's in the North East is I'm not going to talk about Tom Wade because everybody who knows the game in the North East knows the name, and that's exactly what Didier Agat needed. Didier Agat's got a pro license, so he can put a session on, but we all know that the Northern League is different. It's different to any other leagues, and in the end of the day, it's who that get you through. And we couldn't find a better man than Tom Wade to assist Didier.
Certainly a cracking appointment. It'd be good to have him back on the programme, I'm sure, at some point as well. And like you mentioned there, obviously Didier brings with him the name, the reputation, the craft in terms of the coaching and ability on the pitch. Tom has the contact between the two of them. It's really exciting times for Durham off the pitch, isn't it, at the moment?
It is very exciting, but and I think a lot of people, before that, people thought the club was going to die, just didn't know when. But I think right now we're showing that we're nowhere near dying. We just have to be patient, because without a stadium you cannot plan a lot of things. So that's where we over the last couple of years we had to slow down and make sure we concentrate on finding the ground.
Sure.
We still haven't got the ground, but we've got an opportunity that we had to take. So it's just things worked out quite well this season for Durham City.
Well, I'll tell you
Tom's
what.
a great appointment, though, mate, I must admit. Tom, obviously, I've classed heads with Tom a few times when obviously he was at Blythe and I was at Whitby. Great guy. We got on. Obviously, we were very competitive managers against each other. But a fantastic bloke. I mean, we used to message each other during the week if I'd played against the team he was playing that week, and we'd swap notes and stuff. And a great guy. He knows the area. He knows his players.
Yeah.
So great appointment, Olly, mate. Well done on that.
Yeah,
Yes, lad.
fantastic to know that your pub's going to survive as well, Olly. Bearing in mind that you're not having to give a keg to Darren every single month.
It was a lot cheaper than ours, for sure. No, but I'm sure Mark knows probably Tom better than me, because being at Blythe, but it's a good appointment, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, Tom's been around, and I think it's big for Didier. The appointment of Didier will have surprised a lot of people, myself included. It's going to be a help to him because he's got someone who's from the area that's worked in the Northern League.
Yeah.
What I found fascinating, I saw before we came on air to do this, that there's been some signings announced that are from outside of the area. Clearly, young lads, which is the way the club's going to go. So there's a big focus on Didier on the coaching side. So hopefully there'll be a nice balance between the two of them. It's an interesting combination, not one that I think you would have naturally put together. But we'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes and reporting on it.
So,
Yeah, no, they are coming as joint manager, so there's no they here both in the same duty, and I think it's going to work. I think we've tried to combine the tactical side of things with the knowledge of the area. We are going young, don't get me wrong. We will have older heads as well. We could have a Vaz winning team. You never know.
that's two big claims tonight, Olly, that you've made. Newcastle takeover and now Durham. We hope so. It's intriguing as hell. It really, really is. Can't wait to see how that's going to turn out. Just very, very finally, before we move on to our team of the week, Spennymoor Town have announced 7 of their players have re-signed contracts this afternoon. Really, really good news for them. We'll have a bit more news on Hartlepool, all being well, over the next week or so too. One final bit of news: 2 more clubs doing their bit in the communities and going the extra mile, quite literally. Newcastle University and Durham Women as well. Durham Women's first team taking part in a virtual cycle ride from Durham to Wembley to raise money for the Durham Food Bank. That's this Sunday. Newcastle Uni lads, they're doing something relatively similar, aren't they, Mark?
Yeah, so I think they had 9 or 10 away games left this season before everything was brought to a close. So the players and staff, we should say, across the university football setup have joined together and they've run the equivalent distance to each ground around the home villages and in the gym and what have you, to raise money for the Newcastle East End Food Bank. So a fantastic effort from them. I had a piece in the Sunday Sun on yesterday regarding that. Had a chat with someone from the club, and it's a great effort. They've absolutely smashed the target for money. Even better, I think they've done triple the amount of miles they were meant to do. So they've clearly put in some effort. So well done to them.
Plummet. I mean, at the very, very least, at least they didn't have an away trip to Penrith to go, I suppose. That would really set them apart.
They could have actually had Carlisle City, but they played them earlier in the season. So, but I mean, again, exactly, yeah, it goes back to what I said last week about how, despite the fact all these clubs have got, their own financial concerns during this, what's going on at the moment, it's great to see another 3 or 4 clubs, including Durham Women's, really fronting up to the challenges of being impacted in every walk of life, not just football and sport. It's people in day-to-day life have been impacted by it, and they're supporting them, which is brilliant.
Darren, Olly, you're next up to do something like this, aren't you? I heard somewhere along the line, a run, a bike. What are we talking for you two? Football Matters themed, of course.
I'll do a drinking challenge.
I was going to say I actually ran to the corner shop the other day because I realised I'd run out of JD. So
I'm thinking about running Newcastle Paris.
I'm thinking about running in the bath.
There's a definite theme development here as well on Football Matters every single week.
I might stop once. Come on, I can't do it straight, but I might stop once. You see?
I'll hold you to that, mate. I will hold you to that. We shall see. Let's get on to the final bit of business this week. It is, of course, Team of the Week. You've been voting once again on Twitter. Last week, it was the underrated players. There were a few surprises in there, namely Darren choosing Olly. But this week, as voted by you, it is all about the journeymen. Who has been around the block a fair few times? Not necessarily Olly. Who's had more clubs than I've had hot dinners, and whose agent has done overtime and then some? This should be fascinating because there's a few journeymen that spring to mind. Darren, you've got a point here.
Am I right in thinking we can do any players around the world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. I wonder why you asked that, so I'm sure it'll come to light in the next few minutes. I can't wait. Mark, do you want to kick us off in goal? We're going... I'll tell you what. Mark, what formation have you gone? You're going first.
I've gone 4-3-3 because Olly whinged about it last week.
Good. Excellent. Superb. I was going to suggest 4-3-3. So we're going 4-3-3. Goalkeeper. Let's go. Journeyman 11.
Right. I realise what's just been said there, what Darren said, but I have put a bit of a restriction on mine where they have to have played in the Premier League.
Okay.
Firstly, and if he's not in goal here, then I'm not doing these ever again. Simple as that. John Burridge. John Burridge played in the Premier League with Man City. 29 league clubs.
Yeah, it's 29. You're right.
Yeah.
That's more than league cap.
I'm sorry, but
I'll be honest, mate, I did have John Burridge there.
Right.
But then I thought he moved about 21 times in his last 3 years or something.
Another Trevor Benjamin, another one.
So,
he's not going to play goal, though, is he, Olly? Like, that's a bit unfair on Trev.
I looked at keepers like Buffon and people like that, but they didn't have enough clubs. So I went for Peter Schmeichel.
Peter Schmeichel?
Schmeichel had a few, to be fair.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, 7 clubs and 348 appearances.
Well, unfortunately, Darren, Mark is now blackmailing the programme and saying he's never going to do one of these again if we don't go for Burridge. So
I agree with Mark.
Basically, I'm going to threaten that for every single one of my sites.
You'll see rapidly how little we value.
Go on, Mark. Go on. Give us your starting 11 then. Over that.
I get the sense that Olly hasn't done his prep for this one. Darren, you've gone with Schmeichel. Olly, who have you gone for?
He's just agreeing with me.
You've gone
with Mark.
I think we're going to see a pattern here.
So do I, and not just because you've gone for the same formation either. Let's go defence. Darren, who have you got in the back four?
Oh, you what? Well, you hear this back four.
Go on. Who was that?
Cafu. Cafu.
Yep. Good shout.
Ronald Koeman.
My God.
Lothar Matthäus. And Roberto Carlos.
What the heck? Have you misunderstood the question here and you've just gone for an all-round world 11?
Hey,
he went with the FIFA starting lineup 96.
They've all had several clubs.
That's a heck of a back four. My God.
They've
Not that much. They've done 3-4 clubs, but I don't think they've done that many clubs, have they?
Yeah, mate. Just me. I've done my homework.
And on that note, I think it's going to take something to beat that back four. But Mark, try.
Well, I'll be honest. I haven't gone for quality. I haven't gone for the world-class quality that Darren has.
No.
Right back, I've gone for Greg Halford, who was obviously at Sunderland.
Yeah.
12 clubs in 15 years.
Yeah, mad that, isn't it?
Branco, who was at Middlesbrough, the Brazilian, I think had 9 clubs. Craig Moore, who was probably at Newcastle when Olly was there second time round, I'd imagine. And Stephen Colker. Stephen Colker, who's had a few moves. So as I say, not necessarily the quality that Darren went for, but certainly had agents who had the phone permanently attached to their ears.
I'm sure we can mix and match, because I'm looking forward to seeing Ronald Koeman and Roberto Carlos alongside Craig Moore and Greg Halford. That'll be a tremendous...
Mark, is it normal that most of them ones I never heard of?
Yes.
Is that normal?
That doesn't surprise me, Ollie.
Had you heard of Craig Moore, Ollie?
Craig, yeah, most. I played with him actually.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was just checking. That's all. Yeah. If you could remember.
No, but most of them, the goalkeeper, there's five players. Well, 4 out of 5 that I don't know really, never heard of.
Do you not remember Branco from the '94 World Cup? He played left back for Brazil. A great left foot.
Yeah.
I was 5. Branco.
Let's be honest, Ollie. You went 5.
I was okay. I was 7. I was 7.
I was 5, Ollie. I mean, in fairness, yeah, I look just as old. What's your back 4? Just to get onto the final defence.
It was a mix of both.
Was it?
a bit of Darren and a bit of Mark, to be honest. So, I'm a bit confused, to be honest.
Probably should just move on, Andy.
You were the kid at school, Ollie, back in France, where you just waited for someone else to do the homework first and then just dived it on top.
Nah, this one I have to apologise. I had a lot on. Sorry.
Seeing as you've been honest, mate, I will let you off wholeheartedly with that one. And it saves on time, which, let's be honest, bearing in mind my timekeeping abilities, is the help that we definitely needed this week. So thanks, Ollie, for that. Appreciate it. That's great. Let's go midfield. Who do we go for? Mark, let's go for you first on midfield.
Well, 2 of them, I'm at pains to call them journeymen because they were absolutely top class. I always think journeyman sounds a bit derogatory. But Juninho had a fair few moves during his career. Nick Barmby. I think Barmby had a fair few. Very good player as well.
Yep.
And Jermaine Pennant, who had a lot of clubs. So that's my midfield 3.
Yeah. Very interesting. Darren, 3 across midfield.
I had Juninho in the middle, 100%. I've still got him in my pocket from when we played Middlesbrough. But,
easy to produce, then. Happy days. Juninho makes it.
Figo.
Yeah.
We're back to
Rivaldo.
Rivaldo.
Yeah, Rivaldo had a few clubs.
Yeah, the few actually.
I'm just going to
Ronaldinho.
No, steady on, mate. It's a 4-3-3. So we'll put Ronaldinho up top for you. I'm just going to read your team here so far, Darren. This is an absolute who's who. We've got Schmeichel, Cafu, Koeman, Matthias, Roberto Carlos, Juninho, Figo, and Rivaldo. That's like what I used to put
all good team.
Pro Evolution.
Take case. You could throw Clarence Seedorf. Had a few clubs.
You could. All right. All right. Seedorf can go in there. That could work.
Ollie, I imagine you've heard of Jermaine Pennant.
Yeah, good friend of mine.
Yeah, you probably saw the back of his shirt when he skipped past you numerous times in games, I'd imagine.
No, we were catching up in the nightclub after. No way.
That also doesn't surprise me.
Do you want to go into detail on that, Ollie, or do you want to leave it till after the programme's finished?
No.
I think we've learned in the past it's best not to.
Yeah.
Probably best. Let's go forward. Civil's a strong word, isn't it? Let's go forward 3. Darren, who have you got up front? Ronaldinho?
Yeah, well, you put Ronaldinho on there because I was between 3 anyway for a forward position. I was at Ibrahimovic.
Right, yeah.
Vieri, Christian Vieri.
Yeah.
And the old Ronaldo.
The original.
So I was between them 3, to be fair.
Blooming heck. Right. Mark, improve that, please.
Improve it in what sense? Because I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to improve it. Yeah.
The more clubs.
Right, yeah, but I can do that. Yeah. First, Craig Bellamy, great player, but had a fair few clubs during his career.
Yeah.
Next up, Steve Claridge, who played in the Premier League with Leicester, had a lot of clubs. And Marcus Bent, who played at Everton, of course, in the Premier League, amongst others, Ipswich. He had a fair few moves during his career.
See Marcus Bent, Steve Claridge up front alongside Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That'll be a sensation.
There is a bit of a blend in mine where I have got some genuinely top players, but also those that have moved around. But they have all played in the Premier League. So.
It is just to throw two more names into the forwards, because I'll be honest, I'm going to side with Olly here, and I didn't really prepare too much for this one either. But two names that do spring to mind: Nicholas Anelka.
Yeah, that was my top.
Hopton is, and Peter Crouch has been around quite a bit.
Andy Cole was in there as well. Andy Cole.
Cole would have been in there as well. Olly, just you the deciding.
Robbie Keane as well, by the way.
Robbie.
Yeah, Keane's a great shout. Basically, we're just working out who we should put in, who's going to be the most likely to retweet it on Twitter or like it on Instagram, essentially. So we'll
probably none of them. Probably none of them if you call them journeymen, I imagine.
Probably not of mine,
come on, boys. You have to put Trevor Benjamin. Come on.
Trevor Benjamin.
Come on.
To be fair, Trevor did show up when I was looking.
Come on. You cannot do that team without him. He's played about 99 league club. Honestly.
I was going to ask you, Olly, if you wanted to choose your striker, but I reckon you've just chosen Trevor's.
Trevor Benjamin, Bellamy.
Trevor Benjamin flanked by the original Ronaldo and Marcus Bent. That sound all right?
That was me three: Bellamy, Bent, and Trevor Benjamin on top.
All right, Olly.
Sounds like a decent front three. As ever, we'll release that over the next 24 hours. I think it's going to be a colourful 11, shall we say. There's going to be some interesting choices to be made there. But that is that. Your journeyman, for now, 11, will be up tomorrow on social media. Don't give me that look, Mark. Come on, it's not my decision. It's the producer. Blame Johnny Smith at Johnny TV on Twitter, or whatever he is. All of that will be on social media tomorrow. Plenty of food for thought, of course, and it'll be up along with our podcast as well on SoundCloud and even possibly iTunes if we can get around it. But that for now brings an end to tonight's show. Finally, I'm pretty sure we're over time again anyway. Thanks as ever to all of our guests, to Craig Hope and to Liam Kennedy. Mark, quiz back on Thursday?
Yeah, back on Thursday, another special. The Euro 96 one went down very well, so we're going to stay with the international tournaments. We're going to go to the World Cup in 2002, Japan and South Korea. Good tournament. Brazil obviously winning it against Germany in the final. That's not one of the questions, so don't make notes. Yes, so World Cup 2002 special. Thursday night, 10:08. The links will be out on our social media.
Champ?
Is what, sorry?
Who's the reigning champ from last week?
Well, I didn't prepare for that. Paul Robinson won again. Was it Paul Robinson?
Paul Robinson, I think.
Robbo won again, yeah. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Robbo, if you're watching.
I'm sure he'll forgive you anyway. But quiz back on Thursday. Fantastic. Great to see everyone taking part in that. Hopefully it's relieving the lockdown boredom a little bit. But fantastic.
And we should also say, keep an eye out for our the 30-day goal challenge as well on social media.
Yes, I had forgot about that. I had to choose Mena Figueroa today, the long-range challenge. And then I was immediately shouted down about all those goalkeepers who have scored long-range efforts as well. But there was something about Figueroa's against Stoke for Wigan all those years ago, where he drilled it into the top corner from 50 yards. That is different class. I've never seen a free kick being pinged like that from that range. So, I stuck by it eventually. But we've had some good choices so far, haven't we? Mostly, Darren's choices for that have been pretty strong.
Yeah, the George Best one, unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's just a catalogue of quality.
Your knowledge is immense, Daz.
Unbelievable, mate. I love Mr. Google.
Other search engines are available as well. just
the biggest shock was Olly picking a Sunderland goal.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought
did
I
you
was
see?
asleep when that
Don't
came.
be fooled. Don't be fooled by.
cold, calculating mind behind that massive smile. That brings us to an end perfectly. Ollie, Darren, Mark, pleasure as always, lads. See you in 7 days' time. Thanks again. We'll hopefully see all of you back here again as well. In the meantime, this week, like every week, I always say it, football matters, health matters even more. Stay safe, look after your loved ones. From me, Andy Sixsmith, from all of us here at Football Matters, take care. Bye for now.